So the reason we're here is to discuss some of the key market trends that are being talked about at RSNA. And with me is one of the wisest and cleverest no, at a conference, which is saying something. Mitch, would you like to introduce yourself?
Well, I'll try and live up to that reputation. My name is Goldburgh. I am Business Development Director at NTT DATA for Enterprise Imaging and Artificial Intelligence.
Great. And for my part, I'm Felix Beacher. I am an analyst for Signify Research in medical imaging AI. I've got background in neuroimaging, so it's a delight to be here, Mitch.
Great. So,
All right. So just by a kind of show of hands, just at the top level, do that if you're an AI imaging aficionado. Do that if you're a skeptic. Do that if you're somewhere in the middle, Mitch. Will you do that? If you're somewhere in the middle. Good, because that's where good debate lies, right? Okay, fine. So what we're going to do is run through a few questions. Guys, if you want to chip in with questions, we would be very, very happy to take those as well. Okay. Um, all right.
let me explain this for a second.
Please do. Please do.
So I think I'm not really a skeptic on AI overall, but I think it's such a broad category, right? There's Gen AI, there's imaging AI, there's large language models, there's all sorts of algorithms for reconstruction. So I'm a skeptic because I don't think it's everything all at once, plop it in and it all works, right? So that's the answer, the reasoning behind the skepticism. There's clearly use cases around RSNA where people are showing how well AI is performing against specific diseases and specific practice types in the US, outside of the US. So the question needs to get very narrow in terms of teleradiology practices, large hospitals, academic medical centers, because the workflow and the data flow is also very different.
Yes. It was an unreasonable question. This is a very, very complicated field. I just wanted to get a rough idea of where you are. So, Mitch, could you tell us something about when you first came to RSNA and the kind of changes? I know this is a kind of very broad, sweeping question again. Kind of changes you've seen in imaging AI in that time.
So I've been coming to RSNA for quite a number of years. And in the beginning, there was largely about modalities and new imaging types of modalities, from ultrasound to MRs to CTs that had 8 slices per circle of scanning. So now they're up to 256 and greater. MRs are now up to 8 Teslas. Each of these creates needs from more and more algorithms about image reconstruction. Now we have artificial intelligence for producing those. For example, an MR, improving the throughput by shortening the scan time. All of these are tools that have to be integrated into the practice, adopted as standard of care, perhaps get reimbursement. Similarly, beyond modalities, you had picture archiving and communication and the elimination of film. Oh my gosh, don't take the film away. It's a different size of image than my mental muscle is used to. The Is there an oversensitivity to the digital form versus the analog? I think I'm overreading images and coming up with, so there's a lot of validation going with that as well. And I think there's some parallels now that you and I have met, talked, that artificial intelligence can also generate a higher conspicuity so that people may or may not see things and have the similar doubts from prior technologies introduced to RSNA.
Good. Now, could you get just because I think it's such a rapidly moving field. If you try and take a historical perspective of AI development, it can be quite dizzying. And so, could you give us your impressions of when the green shoots of AI in radiology first started to kind of poke through the ground?
Well, I don't think it was medical imaging that was the poke, right? There's been a lot of analysis on workflow, patient care, social determinants of health, things that influence patient care pathways. Artificial intelligence came in as a word for an algorithm that was already in many of the modalities, but now it's an independent tool, independently developed on retrospective data, in a much different way than some of the algorithms inside the modalities are developed to achieve a very specific outcome equivalent to what you would see on film or inside the phantom as a very objective outcome.
Now, for my part, it seems to me that 2 years ago when I was at ECR, it kind of conversations that people were having around imaging AI were quite different from today. And is that your impression too? On how would you describe those differences?
So it's a great question because we all are experiencing the impact of artificial intelligence outside of imaging trade shows. Um, the ability to see that the technology that's out there to assimilate information is at such a rapid pace, and people are overly optimistic that our medical imaging AI is behind because it's operating at a slower pace. People have to appreciate that a Starbucks on Google Maps is on the right hand side of the street. It's okay because when you get there, you see it's on the left and you just make a left. A radiologist says, the algorithm says the tumor's over here and it's really over there. That's not equally as moldable. So we're in real based science. And so we have to take it very carefully to make sure that it's done with measured, repeatable outcomes.
Now, Mitch, I'm only asking you very difficult on almost answerable questions here, but how would you describe the how would you describe the state of radiology on AI today?
We've come a long way. I think we've come a long way, not only as an industry, uh, who's just getting around to sharing clinical data and the amount of data that algorithms are being trained on, in many cases surpasses what a radiologist gets trained on, right? So all of these facts coming together, and there are a lot of platforms that can validate um, critical elements. Critical elements being, does the radiologist agree with the AI output? If so, great. If not, why not? And that's just more data points to help refine the performance of artificial intelligence. So I think we've come a long way, but we're not as far as maybe some of the patients expect us to be, because on their phone, things are happening, on their laptop, things are happening at a much higher rate than we are taking a cautious approach here in healthcare.
Okay, now, guys, if you have questions, do put your hands up. Perfectly happy to take them. Now, if we think a bit back in a completely different field of AI, 1997, Gary Kasparov played Deep Blue by IBM and became the last person to win against top AI system, and then of course to lose. And that was the last time that a human could beat an AI system at chess. Now, my question is, do you think that if you project things forward in the next 5 years, will we see this same kind of progress in radiology AI, where um, the top tools are completely outperforming even the top experts who are humans?
We will certainly advance, but I still don't think we're going to take our hands off the steering wheel and close our eyes and let the car drive us to the bank. Um, the the analogy is great because the permutations in chess and the permutations in diagnosis are equally the same. I think the big difference is many algorithms are very disease specific. So the radiologist who does a gestalt of this image makes me feel good, therefore it's normal, or something like I can't find Waldo, is still going to drive the need for the radiologist. And so, unlike AI competing in chess, AI in digital imaging will always be a tool that's an asset to somebody that has the greater picture.
Okay, good. Now, Mitch, do you use large language models?
In what? In what? Oh, sicher noch. In what? Yes, okay.
in what capacity do I use a large language model? Um, so I do in my personal um, laptop, ask questions, and as you pointed out, it still makes mistakes. So there's still a role for the human to say, there's no way that my friend Steve drove 500 miles an hour on the back roads of London. It's just not possible. So I think that's but it's a great example of people accepting blindly technology and not questioning the output, right? And that's something that will always be there in healthcare. People will always want to check the health of the patient based on their own mental muscle.
Okay, so my question is, and I think this is something that's being discussed all over the conference, how do you see large language models being incorporated into MG's diagnostics in the next 1, 2, 3, maybe 4 even years?
I think the largest application will be in the reduction in the variation of outputs from algorithms, and the reduction of variation in clinical practices. So what you'll see is more consistent outcomes, more consistent reporting formats, more consistent completion of messaging in the diagnostic reports.
Now, I wasn't at RSNA last year. LLMs are still pretty new last year, right? So is there a difference in conversations comparing this year with last year on this particular issue?
Uh, I haven't seen a significant difference. I've seen progression in their performance.
Okay, so I think a related concept to LLMs is the notion of autonomous AI. So do you see LLMs as feeding into an increasing movement towards autonomous AI systems?
Short answer is no. Again, going back to the car analogy, whether it be large language models or image segmentation, image object detection in images, uh, there's always a retrospective training set, which is not absolute. So people will always have to give it a second thought. You can build trust in it, but you're still going to have the human element.
Now, last area of questioning, Mitch, and that is AI platforms. Now, this is a key component of how the AI imaging market is developed. Could you speak to the role, first of all, at a broad level, of how AI platforms are helping the market along?
I First of all, AI platforms in general are accelerating the adoption because of the complexity of onboarding new algorithms within an organization. Uh, each platform has its own wording around what they are, marketplaces, not marketplaces, the orchestration engines, etc. And the benefit of their engine is X, Y, and Z. Uh, some of the platforms, however, go beyond the routing of data, right? And I think those that allow you to understand the performance of the algorithms and the intersection of the data to the orchestration and the output compared to what a radiologist is looking at becomes an important measure, as the ACR and other organizations have pointed out. Uh, Monitoring and measurement of bias and performance are the new quality measure, just like calibrating modalities, calibrating PACS monitors, calibrating all of these things. And so the platforms allow you to have a standard set of tools to orchestrate a quality management system around the adoption of artificial intelligence and its performance.
Now, that is consistent with the projections to Signify Research, which is predicting an ongoing rise in platforms. However, at the same time, the AI imaging market is undergoing a process of consolidation at the moment, and that includes platform vendors. So how do you see that kind of market tussle playing out in the next few years?
Hustle. Okay. I think the market will orchestrate that on its own, right? Because there will, just like if you look at the DICOM routing tools, or you look at some of the other core orchestration tools that are out there, the migration engines, all these tools of the trade for digital imaging. There's always a market for the small players, and they will remain small. And then there are markets for the larger players, like the big iron companies that have their own engines. Then there are those that are partnered with platform companies. Uh, the platform will always have niche advantages through through the display of information. Don't forget, artificial intelligence does not only help the radiologist, but it generates 4 data points. And so, how do you manage 4 data? Right? You have to have a platform that manages that data and displays it in a way that's easily intelligible for the quality manager or the department manager who may not be clinically oriented. Just throwing up more data and more spreadsheets is insufficient. So the shakeout will be, how is that presented? How is it integrated into the workflow? And how AI's performance is measured.
Now,
As I've been going around the conference, I've had lots of conversations with lots of people from lots of vendors. And what I'd be very interested to know from you, Mitch, is what kind of challenges are uppermost in people's minds, in particular, the developers of AI systems. But what are the problems do you think that they are talking about the most?
Well, reimbursement is one at the top of the list. Secondarily, the to differentiate the multiple algorithms and how the performance of those algorithms, why minutely different, is important. And then whether or not they're available on one or more platforms. It'll be an interesting tussle on that. But there's, just like with ultrasound and some of the other imaging modalities, there's going to be consolidation. Whether it's 2 or 3 years from now, I'm not sure, but there's definitely going to be consolidation.
Look, Mitch, in 2 or 3 years' time, we'll know the answer to these kind of questions, and it's going to be fascinating to see.
And I look forward to our panel in 2 or 3 years. Thank you for your time.